There we go. All right, it is 7:04. We'll call our meeting to order. And we'll start with any amendments to the agenda. Anybody? Oh, I'll add one. We're going to add David on here to talk about the broadband committee and $5,000 grant he received, or they received. It's all on you.
Oh, okay. I'm good to go now then, huh?
You good to go now, David?
I know what, because I can't see the agenda where you threw it and put me in. So, well, thank
Right
you.
at the beginning. We don't like to hold people up.
I love it. Every time I come, I get to go first. So thank you for
Right.
that. It's good to get up there and get into it. So hopefully you've all seen the award letter we've received from Connect Maine that has confirmed the receipt of our initial grant application with the supplemental information that we sent up, and that they did in fact award us a $5,000 grant. That is obviously contingent on a couple things. First of all, they've requested a W-9 from the town. So if somebody could send that to me, I could forward that on to Connect Maine and satisfy that part of it. The second part of it is that we are supposed to complete our mission and do the actual work for the planning. And then once we do that, we will do a completion report. And at that point in time, they will release the grant money. So in the interim time, I'm not quite sure how we pay bills, or we'll do that, but we'll work with you to figure that out going forward. Also, I think we've already received a couple donations or a couple pledges for donations. So we'll have to figure out where that funds go, if they go directly to the town, or just give me some instructions on what to do with that there. So with that award letter, we are going to go forward, and our first objective is to survey the town and determine what is the need that's out there, who's lacking with high-speed access, and if they have access but they can't afford it, to try to gauge that as well. So the next step is to form a survey, get it out in the mail, by email, any way we can throughout the town, and compile the results of that. Then we hope to accomplish that this month, and then next month we hope to start some community forums to get feedback that way. And then in March, that's our completion date for doing an actual infrastructure inventory and a gap analysis to see what areas we really need to address in our planning. So that's the broad overview of where we're at, but just the biggest news that I wanted to deliver is that we were successful in gaining the grant, and we look forward to putting that money to use and doing some proper planning to get to the point where we can actually have a plan for distributing the ability for all Newcastle residents to get high-speed internet capabilities, and to figure out how we're going to do that, and maybe then seek a grant for accomplishing that afterwards. We have a year to do that, but we would like to accomplish that much faster than a year, obviously, because the need is today, even more than ever with the quarantines and remote learnings from the school. So with that, I will just answer any questions you have. And if none, I'll say good night.
I think, John, we need to create two new accounts, right, in the books for that, one for donations, one for the grant.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a pretty simple process, and we'll find a way to create something. So whereas they're giving it directly to the town, obviously there's it's a tax write-off and all that. So we certainly want to give people that, make it as easy as possible for anyone. Yeah.
So
David,
far, there's two $50 donations that are coming your way.
Thank you. Thank you to all of those. And if others are interested, right,
yes.
We can.
And that's part of the grant process too, to have community involvement. And the more their involvement is with funds, that's even better. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad there's a place to park that. So I'll make sure to inform those donors to get the money to the town.
Absolutely. Yep. We'll issue an invoice, and so that way they have a receipt, so they have a copy of their, so that way if they need to deduct it or do whatever they need to do, we can make sure that everyone's covered in that regard, and obviously we'll keep an eye on those monies, and we can disperse them. We can disperse money in terms of expenditures, before we get to that point in the anticipation we will receive the grant as well. So we can move if there's costs that we need to for the committee to get going. We can move ahead on that.
Do you have a standard W-9, or would you like me to prepare that for you for your signature?
We do have something in the office, but let me check with Michelle to see what we have. I'll get in touch with you tomorrow, and so I can get something, so we can get something back. Between you and I, we'll get it figured out tomorrow. How's that sound?
Perfect. That's great. Or the next day, as long as it's
soon. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Great. Anybody have any questions for David?
No, just nice job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hope we're successful in the long run.
Sure, you will be.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Good night, all.
Thanks, David.
Bye. If I can figure out how to exit.
All right, moving on. We've got the minutes from December 28th. Have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you,
to
Joel.
approve.
A second. Thank you, Tor. Discussion? No? Everything's good? Everybody's good? All right. All in favor? Passes 5-0. All right, 4.1, filling a selectman's vacancy. What do you guys want to do? Like John laid it out, you can start the process now, or you can wait till June. What do you got? Maybe a month and a half between the two, John? By the time you did everything, it'd be middle of April by the time you did an election.
Right. Yeah.
Joel.
So just for everyone watching and whatever, if we were, what would the process be for actually filling the vacancy? Just so that everyone understands, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's kind of hard to have meetings. It's kind of hard to have special elections. So what would this entail for the town and everyone else?
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Joel, because I tried to get into some of that with the next section of my report where I talked about the budget process, because there's certain things I think that the 5 of you are going to have to make assumptions of, or 4 of you are going to have to make assumptions of for a period of time, not knowing exactly how the legislature is going to act regarding some of the changes in law that they made, for example, last year, allowing for the secret ballot town meeting and some of these other different ideas that we were using, shortened timetable for absentees and all this other stuff. So we're going into this entire season not really knowing exactly what that landscape is going to look like, but using what we do know, there is traditionally a 60-day window for nomination papers to be circulated, or 45-day window for nomination papers to be circulated. You do have the ability, whereas you're filling a vacancy, to shorten that window. This was discussed when Wanda filled the seat that Chris Doherty had vacated. There was some conversation whether or not that could be fit into the timetable to hit November. So everything did hit the normal statutory windows, but it's one of those situations where there was a lot of discussion regarding that. So to back up, so basically we have a window of time for nomination papers to be circulated. Residents would have to get 25 signatures signed. That's still the law of the land, COVID or not. And then that would, by registered voters in the town of Newcastle, then that would be certified by the clerk, and then a ballot, and it would be created, and absentee ballot process would begin until the period by which you would have an election. Now, that's why I didn't go to the specific date because I didn't want to count the dates because there's the question as to what the actual resignation date is and so forth. But in any event, it looks like about mid April would be the time in which you would hit a normal cycle for a vote, as opposed to early mid June, assuming again that everything goes along normally in terms of timelines and deadlines. So it's about 8 weeks difference between choosing to fill the vacancy now. And again, this is the remainder of a 1-year term. So, or I guess it would be if you did it in April, it'd be 2 extra months, but 2 months in a 1-year term, and then this seat would be open again a year from June, which would be June 2022. So the question really, to me, that as I looked at it, is the question is, can the 4 board members operate in that way? Through that extra 2 months that you would need, can you make the decisions on the budget and make sure kind of set the stage for the summer, and if you can do that, then great. If not, if you feel like you need to fill that seat now, fill one seat at in an April timetable, and then there's 2 vacancies. Joel's seat and Wanda's seat are up in June. So really, you either have 1 vote in April and 2 more in June, or you have three seats that are all up in June at the same time.
Tor.
So, my only thought on this is that for a matter of 6 to 8 weeks, so we're talking maybe 3 or 4 meetings, basically BOS meetings. If we don't have anything, I guess earth shaking or shattering on the agenda for that time period, this board seems to be in agreement for just about all votes. So I don't think, it doesn't seem like we have any 50-50 splits on things. So, just looking at the track record, we might be able to make it through a few meetings and put everything on the town warrant as one big package. Just my thought.
Wanda.
I kind of agree with Thor. I think the less elections you have, I think the better off we are, especially in these times. I think, plus it gives people, if we put it out there now or soon that we're going to have 3 potential slots open, it gives people time to think about it. Where if you just put it out there now, there's going to have to be some fast moving to get this all in place. And I think you want good candidates. So, if you put it out there and we just do it in June, I think that's the right thing to do. But then trying to squeeze in a special election somewhere in these times, it's kind of tough. Plus, whoever's coming in is going to come into in the middle of budget, which I'm not even feeling real comfortable that I have my hands around the budget at this point, especially when COVID hit last year. So bringing somebody new into that, I don't know if that's the best option. I think June might be a better option, just my opinion.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I agree. I think the level of effort, to get someone in there for such a short period of time, I don't think that serves anyone well. I mean, we saw last fall when we were thinking of special meetings and things that how much work that is for the office staff. I don't think we want to do that to them. So I think again, we've been working well together. I don't foresee that changing. So I think that it's more prudent to put it back to June.
Joel.
I would say after sitting through a few of those last couple weeks before town meeting, it's kind of a weird time because Wanda's experience was exceptionally weird for her first year because of COVID. But the thing is that it actually isn't too much different than that, except that we usually know when and where we're going to have our meeting. So But there's always these last minute things that we're just trying to fine tune and figure out. It's a really hard time for someone to come in and understand what's going on. It's really hard after that because you're kind of in the flow of it all. But especially at that time, it would be hard for someone to really make a meaningful contribution to everything. So, and I would just say that, we have this election coming up. There would be 2 seats for 3-year terms that would be being put out there, and there would be one seat for a 1-year term. So it would be kind of a different ballot, because it wouldn't be three seats. You would be voting on 1 seat for the 1-year term, and then you'd be voting for the 2 other seats. So anyway, I think it makes more sense to just put it all on the same election. We'd like to get the most amount of voters for anything that we can. So it would seem to make sense to fill the seat. So
I agree with you guys. That brings up a question though, John. How do you put that in the ballot if we're going to do in June just a 1-year position?
Sorry, I had to find my unmute button. So the question was, how do you show one seat being for 1 year and 2 other seats for 3-year terms?
Right.
They would be effectively separate seats that someone would fill out nominations papers for. So you'd take out papers either for the 1-year seat or for the 3-year seats. And so you'd have to pick or choose which one you wanted to jump into, I guess. And they would be listed separate on the ballot. So let's say, for example, we had 4 people, who filled out nomination papers for the 3-year seats. And we had 1 person who filled out the nomination forms for the 1-year seat. Well, unless there's a write-in, the 1-year seat person's probably going to get in, right? And the 2-year seats will be the top 2 vote getters. And it's possible that, the 3rd vote getter, it's potential that the 3rd vote getter in that who loses could have more votes than the person who ran for the 1-year term. Crazy things can happen. I don't know this person, so I'm not going to vote for them. There's a lot of psychology about why people vote the way they do and why certain things go a certain way. But, I think, but that would be the simplest way. It would just be simply 2 separate elections, even though they end up serving on the same board together.
Well, it sounds like you guys are all in agreement for that. So I'm sure the office staff will appreciate it. So there's another vote I think you guys should talk about, and that's the chair position. It's not on our agenda, but you should talk about whether you want to fill it or just let the vice chair take over for the remainder of the year. I would think you would want a chair in place just for, reasons that they're the ones that call the emergency meetings. They're the ones that put things in the ballot versus 3 of you having to do it. But that's up to the 4 of you, however you want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Joel.
I'd say as far as the way that the bylaws are set up that we put in place, if we don't really have a protocol for if the board chair resigns, we just have a protocol for if the board chair is not present and able to carry on meetings. So I would be happy enough to continue as vice chair and acting as board chair. I would, if you weren't, when your resignation is complete, I would essentially be acting as board chair in that capacity, and Wanda would be acting as vice chair because she is the next senior member of the board. I have no problem with doing that. I also have no problem with going out to elections, to having an election for a new board chair and a new vice chair, if that's what the rest of the board decides they want to do, or if I don't want to do I'm happy to take on the role. and fill the need. But, you know, if anyone else would like to do it, or if there's another, if someone doesn't, you know, if one doesn't want to be vice chair, I don't know, act as vice chair, you know, I think it would make sense to definitely have the vote. So, but I think if we do it, we should do it with the 5 of us, just because it creates a little bit of an issue when you have a two, you know, when you have a 4-person board. So I think if we were going to do it, it would make sense to do it now, or set it for our next meeting. But that's just my take on it. So,
Rob?
I'm comfortable continuing that way. I mean, I think, you know, there have been meetings where Brian hasn't been present. They've been running fine. I think, you know, again, we've got a board that's working well. I think the structure we have has been working well. I'm comfortable continuing with it.
Tor, Wanda? Tor?
Yeah, I'm down with that. I think that works.
And I'm willing to do the best I can with what I got.
you're great, Wanda.
You do fine.
Not making any
If Paul
promises.
can do it, come on.
And I'm still just vice chair, you know.
Yeah, but you get the target.
Yeah.
I get it anyway. Believe me, talk to people on my road.
You just got to show up to every meeting, Joel.
A mailbox gets hit and it's my fault. So there you go.
That's right. All right, great. Then moving on, we'll talk about the fiscal year 22 budget process. Go ahead, John.
Well, so this is really talking about, for me, this is about schedule and about what the expectations are for your group. Every year, budget boards like to do this a little different. They learned a little bit from last year. They want to do the opposite of what they did the last year. They want to, you know, whatever it is. I think we all want to do something different than the year 2020. Although 21's not working out so great so far, but let's hope it's better, right? Last year was the weirdest budget process I've ever been a part of. That's for sure. So anyway, what does that mean? So I think that there's a couple things that would be helpful in terms of setting kind of the scope for the spring to come. Knowing that you're going to operate with a 4-person board by the time the budgets are going to be set. I think that helps, at least knowing what we're looking at, and we're not going to introduce a new member who may have different priorities or different goals in the middle of that budget process, which could, you know, be really problematic. As Brian said, we're always at the end, and Joel knows every year we're at the end, and it's, you know, we think about, you know, the board has thought completely differently about how they wanted to do the budget, you know, 2 weeks before it has to be done, you know, and that's just that's kind of just the way it kind of happens. That's not intentional, and it's not meaningfully difficult, but it's just the fact of it. Having said that, you know, last year we tried a different approach, which was a little bit more goal oriented, I think, in terms of trying to hit targets and trying to meet the needs of what the board was looking for. But I know that there was, you know, there's some frustration, and I think we really didn't have an opportunity to do as much conversation. I don't even want to say education. I think conversation about what's in the budget. What's the budget made of? What are the various line items? How do we get there? And, you know, part of that was because none of us were in the office. There was no, you know, it was just really just bad. So what I'd like to be able to do is find out from the 5 of you, you know, kind of some broad parameters in terms of how we want to operate this spring. Maybe we don't have them all set up tonight. My thought was at your next meeting, really to start talking about what sort of goals, budget goals would be, but maybe tonight to more talk about timetables and timeframes and all that. So I threw some ideas out in terms of targets that we could use in terms of putting together that budget, you know, kind of project. And I'm also suggesting that perhaps we try to look to wrap up earlier than we usually do. And that's not because I expect that we're not going to hit that and we're going to change it anyway as we get closer. But I think that it may take us longer this year just because, Brian and Ben have been on this board since, I think, 1765, I'm pretty sure. And
Feels like it.
so, for the four of you guys and myself, yes, there's going to be some different priorities and different, for Rob and Tor, this is your first budget process. Wanda, this is like your 1.5 first budget process, right? Because last year was, I don't know.
Nasty.
So, so it's new. And so, I think that it would be really important if we could talk about, what are we looking at at your next meeting? Talk about what we're talking about for salaries, maybe, or overall percentage increases, and road projects, and if there are any capital needs for the fire department, things like that. Big picture, ballpark numbers at your next meeting, and then really spend tonight talking about kind of the timetable. So my thought was, if that being the first block, I suppose, in this process, would be that kind of big picture, overall arching kind of goal setting at your next meeting, that would then give department heads and myself 2 to 4 weeks ish to craft the document, which would be end of February, early March. And then that would give 4 to 6 weeks really for the board to chew on and to find a way to be comfortable with the numbers included therein. Now, and then from that point, that we would still have another month or so where the budget could be potentially changed. But the reason why I want to hit that mid-April number is, one, we know that time kind of got away from us last year thanks to COVID. But we also don't know if we're going to have this voted on by secret ballot, or if you want to have it voted on by secret ballot. And so that's the last kind of decision that maybe you're not ready to make tonight, but at least to set the idea of, we want to do this, what's the type of thing we'd like to do, or what have you. There's a lot that's going to happen in the legislature in the next 6, 8, 12 weeks to set whether or not how that would work, what our timetables would be. But if we have a budget done, say mid-April, we're going to be able to do whatever we want. We're going to be able to do it on the floor of town meeting. We'll be able to do it as a secret ballot. We'll have a variety of options available to us. So that was kind of my thought, was to try to get it done as a little bit earlier than we usually do. And we may not be able to hit it, but if we get to, say, early April and the legislature doesn't have an answer, or, we'll be able to, I guess, shift on the fly there. The main thing is really making sure you guys feel good with what those numbers are, that you're comfortable with where the budget's going, that that the four of you have what you want that budget to look like, and the policy goals for the town are included there. And so that's really the most important thing about the next meeting, is to really just start to lay those out for the department heads, so they know when they do present you with numbers, myself, when I present with numbers, that we're not starting at square one with those numbers. We're already got an idea of what the answers to the test are. So that's the idea. And understanding that you may get to the end and say, well, geez, we can't afford that, or geez, we should have done more than that. That's why you're the selectmen, and we're the hired help in town, and so that's why you guys get paid the big bucks to be the decision makers and in chief. So that's the plan. That's kind of what I'm laying out here. But the starting point would be that meeting next week, or excuse me, your next regular meeting.
Go ahead, Joel.
So there's a couple things that I think make this budget process a little bit more difficult than others in the past. One is, we're still in the pandemic. We're still meeting via Zoom. It's harder to stop in and ask questions. But the other side of it is that last year we set some good goals, but they were simple goals and they were easy to like keep an eye on. And it's let's maintain the mill rate. But that's not going to be as easy this year because we don't really know what the mill rate's going to be. It would probably be really easy to maintain the mill rate and increase the budget by a lot. You know, it's because the new valuation is going to go into effect. It's going to change all of that. So I think the thing that, you know, when I first started on the board and we went through the first budget season, it was very confusing for me because it was just a whole bunch of numbers, a whole bunch of categories. I had no background at all toward it. I was very, like, I just didn't know. So I didn't know what to think for year one going in. What does this, all this mean? I think that it would be good to maybe get, you know, to maybe schedule a Zoom meeting with John, each one of us to schedule a Zoom meeting with John, just to kind of get an idea going into it, where we stand, where the numbers are for, just so we understand the budget, where the numbers are right now, where they've been for the past few years, what expenses are going up. What expenses, there's a lot that's out of control that we can't really, we don't get to make many decisions on. But I think when it comes to making some of the bigger decisions as what projects we do this, you know, this coming road construction year, what other things we try and accomplish that are going to cost some money for the town, building projects, maintenance projects, all those things. It's good to understand that baseline and the numbers that we can't control. And so, you know, in the budgeting process, a lot of that we don't know yet. We don't know what the education is going to be. We don't find that out until well into the process. But I think it would be good just to get a quick, for each of us to have a one-on-one with John and just sort of get an idea as to where things are moving, so that when we move on to the other parts of the budget, road projects, maintenance projects, what buildings to work on, all that stuff, we have a little bit more of an idea as to in our heads what we're talking about, and not just these numbers that are floating around. We have no context for them. So
Right.
that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, because I was thinking this year, John, you're probably going to have to do more line by line with everybody, really, because, you know, it's Wanda's second budget, but Rob and Torts are first. And I know Wanda missed last year how we really got to the big picture and the end numbers because we didn't go line by line. I think this year you got to step back and just start at the basics and work your way up through. So you know what creates that administration budget or the fire department budget or our projects and everything else, just to get everybody up to speed, because this is going to be really, you know, it's a new board for the budget for the first time through in quite a while. So go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, from the outside, I actually thought watching the process last time looked like it went quite well. I really liked the way the board talked about the big goals and used those to have the town manager develop the numbers, the board giving the direction. And I thought that from the outside, it looked like it worked pretty well. And I like that approach. Again, as Joel mentioned, you know, the goal of the mill rate isn't meaningful because we have the revaluation that it's going to be a totally unrelated number. But I think things like we want to prioritize X, we want to make sure that the budget, you know, the total, you know, taxes raised are, you know, we only go up by this, or we want to keep them flat, or whatever. I think those are really valuable to sort of think about those big things. And I think, Joel, your idea of having us each talk to John to sort of make sure we understand the details, I think that'll be really helpful. But I don't know that we need to go through them in our meetings. But I think if we set those goals, then we can look at the numbers that John brings us and say, well, wait a second, how does this meet this goal that we set? But again, I thought it looked as though it worked well. A second point, a general point question that I have is, how has the pandemic impacted the budget for this year? And is that, you know, we can look at the history of the town budgets and sort of use that as we think about where next year should go. But I guess the thing that I don't feel like I have an understanding of is, how has the pandemic impacted our operating budget for this year? And I think that would be something that'll be a useful piece as we develop next year's budget.
True. Wanda.
And I think, you know, Joel made a point about the schools and how we don't know what their budget's going to be until late in the process. But the one thing I think we have to bank on is those costs are not going to stay flat. I mean, schools have like everybody, I mean, they've had waged a lot of improvements they've had to do. Now the government says they're going to step in and help and give money for a lot of that, but who knows if that's going to happen. But it's cost schools a lot of money to put people home and keep them home and teach remotely. And I can't imagine that number is going to stay where it has in the past. So, you know, somewhere, which we're not going to know till later, but I think we have to bank on that number is going to go up, just kind of as we're thinking about the rest of the budget, because I can't imagine that number is going to stay where it is with all that's been going on and the uncertainty of what the future is going to bring for the schools.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to hold it. Wouldn't they go up 2% last year? I don't think that's going to happen this year. So, Joel.
Another element that we have this year, and this is why I kind of thought it's not that I don't want to go over the whole budget in our meeting. I think it's important to do it. If the majority decides that going through it line by line is helpful. I mean, that part never was really that helpful for me when I was going through it, to go through it line by line in the meetings, but reviewing it and asking a bunch of questions always was. And so that's what I started to do a couple of years ago, is that we got the whole budget. I had a list of questions that I had for John. And so I called him up and said, hey, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And where's this going? Just because I like to understand kind of where I'm coming at with the meat and potatoes, the things that we really need to do and the things that we've already committed to for when we're planning out all the other things. Like, what are you going to do for renovations on your house this year? Well, it depends on, you know, how much you have left in your budget after all these other things. And we do have, you know, a new loan that we didn't have before. I mean, the entire time I've been on the board, we've been shedding debt. And this year we did take on a big piece. So we have that element to sort of understand how that impacts the budget that we're seeing. Just so I think it would be good, again, just to have that meaningful time to just sort of, so that each one of us understands it in our own way, on our own space, and then come together as a group and we can all discuss it in the public forum and really have some good meaningful discussions where we all feel comfortable with it. So that's my main goal with it. And whether, like I said, if it makes sense to go through it line by line and just go through it as a group, I'm totally fine with that. But if we don't have to do that, I'm fine with that too, because it takes a long time. So
yeah, as long as everybody gets educated, because it does take a couple of years to get your hands around this budget and how it all works and what line affects what. Not so much, you know, there's all kinds of little things in the administration side that nobody cares about. We don't care about how many paper clips they buy. We just care about, you know, what they want to spend on that stuff. But there's a bunch of other things that go into it that, you know, this relies on this. And if you don't get one versus the other, you don't understand why you're there at all. So, but I think the one-on-one meetings with John, I know he'll love that, but I think that's good. I think if you maybe get the budget out, kind of give an idea, maybe just reproduce last year's budget so they get an idea where it is, so they get something to look at, to ask questions. when you meet up might be good. Give them a little head start.
What it's worth, I'm not against meeting with you guys individually to talk about this. What I hate is making decisions in the meeting and then going back on it a month later. So if we can avoid that, I'll meet with you guys for hours on end in my office. We can do whatever. We can do Zoom, we can do whatever, but just straight ahead, whatever that is, just give me the direction, and this plow horse will move, So just let me know. But no, I think that's great. Let me ask you this: would it be helpful to look at maybe the year to dates at next meeting, so that way you can get a sense of where we are with the half year, and that can talk a little bit about the pandemic response, 6 months of a pandemic response, and we can kind of, I don't know if we'd go line by line, but at least we can get a little bit more comfortable with the same format that we're going to see with new numbers in it. So maybe we start with that next week. Would that be a good idea for everybody? Everyone like that? And if you want to meet individually, we can, Brian, short term. I mean, if you want to meet individually, I'm certainly glad to do that. No problem. That's what I'm here for. So I'm glad to meet with any of you beforehand. I could do something where I get it out this week, so you have all next week to find a time to sit down and chat or whatever, or call me on the phone or Zoom or whatever it is, and we can meet and we can talk about any questions you might have before the meeting, and then we'll all get together and we can talk about it then as well. But maybe that's a good idea. Start. I don't know. Maybe
it'd be good if we could get maybe prior year budget and year to date.
Yep. So prior year, so year end June 30, and so we're working on that anyway, because we're trying to pull our audit stuff together anyway. So we can do that.
Right.
I say we, me, and then Michelle. How do I get this report to work? So that's how we really get things done. Anyway.
I'd also just say it's good to have all that stuff, but if you could just compile something, because I kind of feel like you almost kind of know, you're so good at your new position as administrator that you kind of already know where it's going to be at. I mean, this is what we all do in business, is that you have an idea as to where you're at. Yeah. You check the numbers and you're like, oh my God, that is where we're at. What am I going to do? But you understand what impacts are worth considering while we're moving into the next budget. I guess that's all I'm trying to say that would be helpful for me, just so that I know when we're looking at how many roads are we going to do, how many road projects are we going to do, what are we going to ask our road commissioner to, because that's part of our direction along with you is to help develop this work plan. Mm-hmm. And so before we just say, John, go figure out this work plan, for this, or let's reside this building and let's repair this building and let's, do all these projects. We need to know that it's going to fit within the budget that we all feel comfortable with. So just sort of getting that initial, here's the loan that we're going to be, that we're going to have to budget for this year that we didn't have to budget for before. Here's the, these other chunks. Here's what health insurance is going up. Here's, all these things that we can't control and have already committed to, so that when we start looking at these other projects, we can weigh them out,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'll be able to give you the answer that I'd be satisfied with if I were in your seat, in a week's time. I think I can give you where we've been and kind of the 10,000 foot view of what's coming at us in the coming year. And there's actually some good news. The governor's budget actually expects we're going to get more revenue sharing, not less. Which will be a big boost for us. So that just came out on Friday. So that's one plus. But you talked about the loan and all that other. I mean, that stuff is coming. But yeah, I can give you certainly that that idea. I don't want to ruin the big show of the big reveal of the budget, though, Joel. So
No,
I
no,
want to
no,
make
no.
sure.
That's not what
I want
I'm
to make
asking.
sure everyone's looking forward to the.
I'm just looking for the shooting off the hip John Duke, you know?
Yikes! Yeah. Okay. No. I know what you're saying, though. Yeah, I think because that's it. That's really what you guys need to know is what's the big picture? How is this going to impact us? And yeah, we can do that. We can absolutely do that. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the budget? On the process? All right, moving on. Solid waste disposal contract. Fun stuff. Joel, go ahead, buddy.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the solid waste contract as presented.
There you go. Rob, you seconding it? Any discussion on it? I'm sure you guys read it all, full detail, right?
You did see my note about the rate of increase, though.
Yeah.
So it's something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
Yeah.
Well, didn't it go down the past 2 years though?
It did. Well, it's kind of. It was kind of
Yeah.
level-ish, downish, but this was a pretty big jump this year. So.
All right, all in favor? That's 5-0. All right, then we'll move on to the other.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Send
Hey,
a note to
Brian?
Dave Levesque.
Add it to the survey.
that's right.
No, he's still there. There he is.
High-speed internet here.
There's a car coming. He had to get out of the way. That's what it was.
All right, so we'll move on to the septic waste disposal facility agreement for Interstate Septic.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Rob? Rob, all right, thank you, Rob. Any discussion? This is just an annual contract we signed to haul our waste out of town, so.
It's our
All right,
septic.
all in favor? Passes 5-0. All right, moving on to our town warrant for $21,329.03. That's gonna be like the lowest warrant we've had in like forever.
Yeah,
So moved.
Have a second?
second.
Thank you, Wanda. Discussion? No? All in favor? That's 5-0. Ah, computer keeps freezing up. All right, I guess we just need a motion to go into executive session. Or my notes, MRSA section 405-6A. Oh,
Before
Wanda.
we do that,
Oh,
Brian, can I
yeah.
make a comment about the manager's report?
Yes, sorry.
That's
I was
okay.
skipping over John's report because we talked about most of it. So.
Yeah. The only thing I wanted to talk about is I had a call from a couple of concerned citizens who live on the West Old County Road, and they're concerned about the trees being cut, what the plan is for that road. They don't want to see it become a super highway, and to be honest with you, until I read your report, and it looks like it's a project that Seth's looking at for the coming year, not something that we have budgeted already. So I just wanted to get some clarification on what we are doing so I can get back to them as to what the plan is, because it sounds like there's some concern there, not without knowing on what the plan is. So
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's glad you brought it up, Wanda. So this is the first year for the West Old County Road in terms of the town's 3-year rolling road plan in terms of repair. So in the same way that this year we handled Stonebridge Circle, and the prior year the town handled West Hamlet Road, the next road in that cycle is the West Old County Road. So the first year of that cycle is the tree cutting and cutting back the brush from the road. So what's in the budget this year is just that tree cutting of the right of way on West Old County. Now, what complicates part of this is that a private landowner on West Old County Road cut a lot of trees off of a parcel that's runs a good length of the road, which has created a lot of concern on the road by neighbors and residents, and concern about what trees are left and so forth. Which I'm not saying that's necessarily the case of who you spoke with, Wanda, but I'm just saying in terms of calling to the office, that's something that we had to deal with. We also then, after those trees were cut, we've had some storms since then. And so the landowner left a number of the trees in the right of way, cut other trees, but left other trees in the right of way. And what seems to have happened, and probably anyone who's gone through between Bath and Brunswick, they thinned out all those trees, and now a lot of them are starting to fall because everything else around it was cut. And so I don't know if the trees couldn't handle the wind or whatever. So in any event, we've had a number of storms where trees on that same stretch seem to have come down. They've come down across the road. They've come into people's yards. They brought the power down. And so anyway, that's a long way of saying, regardless of that, there are a number of trees that are in the right of way that were due to be removed as part of the plan anyway. Over the last week or two, a number of those trees have been marked on West Old County Road for removal. And then traditionally Asplund, who's the contractor who has the town's contract, goes through and handles those in the wintertime. But that's the extent of any work in this budget cycle. Any further work on that road. So some of the other more, the reclaiming and the resurfacing, new ditching, new cross culverts, all of that work, that would be part of a future budget. So that would be part of something that I would presume would be part of any sort of, capital plan or part of the budget for the coming year. So that's really something that the four of you will really have to discuss in terms of, do you want to continue on with that plan? Where else would you go? What's the highest priorities? So, et cetera. So that's as far as the tree cutting is really this year's budget. It's in this year's budget, but that's the end of any other work on West Old County Road until the budget. This coming summer's budget says otherwise or says something new to be done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just, I want to be able to get back to him. And I said, as far as I knew, I did talk about there had been like a 3-year plan for roads. I certainly did not know for sure if this was what they were doing in part of that. But as far as I knew, there was no money, but they were concerned about, getting really widened and paved more. And then it becomes this little highway up there for, people to go take joyrides and.
Yeah, no, understandable. And we have a number of roads, regardless of road surface, we have a number of roads that are very narrow and vegetation has really kind of come in. East Old County Road, for example, if you head up that way, it's part of Kavanaugh. There's a number of town roads that we have, we probably need to be a bit more aggressive in, regardless of the 3-year plan. But this is an opportunity to really, Island Road is another one, Station Road. So, the roads that haven't had a great deal of investment in the roads in a while, that's kind of what you see. And I think that the private landowners cutting really kind of was a shock to the system for a lot of folks on West Old County. And so I can understand their concern and, certainly wanted to keep an eye on it for sure.
Well, and I live on a road much like that.
Yeah.
And
I
know that I love to walk my dog and everybody else does. And when you're meeting cars flying by you, it doesn't, that's not what this road is. This road is just, basically it's a glorified driveway, but ambulances, fire trucks and plows have to get down it. So, that factors into it too, to a certain point that, it has to be passable and trucks have to be able to meet and get by. And so.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Probably won't be any widening of that road, Wanda. Usually they clear the trees out of the ditch lines so we can get everything ditched and shed water, but
yeah,
get anything below 14 feet out of the way. The low hangers across the road, but I don't think any of our plans have called for widening any of our roads.
Usually, like there's a couple blind hill type situations where they might try to widen a little bit just so you're not meeting someone in the middle of the blind hill. That's usually the areas they look at. But
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think so.
All right, thank you.
Anything else on John's notes? All right. Computer, knock it off. Somebody want to come help me work a computer? All right, we'll try this again. So I need a motion for an executive session. I need MRSA section 4056A personnel.
So moved.
Thank you, Joel. Do I have a second? Rob, thank you. All in favor?